Imagine, dear listener, that you are lying comfortably, your body sinking deeper into the bed, while your mind prepares to wander through time. The world around you grows quieter, softer, until only the gentle rhythm of your breath remains. Tonight, we begin a long journey, one that stretches across centuries, across oceans, and into the very heart of America. A land celebrated as the land of the free, yet whispered about as the secret home of the Freemasons. Before we begin, I invite you, kindly and warmly, to subscribe. By subscribing, you will join us on many more journeys like this one. Together, we will drift through the corridors of history, uncovering mysteries, legends, and forgotten tales, always in a way that soothes the mind and brings rest. So take a moment, if you wish, to subscribe. And then allow your eyelids to grow heavier, because the story is just beginning. Let us turn back the clock, to the late 17th and 18th centuries. The American colonies were young then, fragile, and yet full of possibility. People from across Europe crossed the Atlantic in search of freedom, land, and new beginnings. They came with dreams, with fears, with prayers whispered into the salty winds of the ocean. In taverns lit by flickering candles, men gathered to speak of independence, of self-governance, and of destiny. Among these men, many were part of a brotherhood, an ancient fraternity whose roots reached back not just decades, but centuries, the Freemasons. The Freemasons began as guilds of medieval stonemasons, builders of cathedrals and castles. But over time, their lodges became places not only for craftsmen but for thinkers, philosophers, and seekers of truth. By the 1700s, their meetings were no longer about building stone structures, but about building ideas, structures of philosophy, ethics, and liberty. As you rest and listen, picture a quiet Masonic lodge. A room with polished wood, candlelight glowing on symbols carved into the walls, the square and compass, the letter G shining faintly, the mysterious all-seeing eye. Gentle voices speak of reason, of fraternity, of the pursuit of knowledge. In these lodges, men shared not only secrets, but hopes for a better world. And so, when the colonies began to stir with thoughts of breaking away from Britain, it was no surprise that many of the leaders, George Washington, Benjamin Franklin, Paul Revere, and others, were Freemasons. Their hearts were divided between the public duties of revolution and the private rituals of their fraternity. The revolution itself seemed touched by both light and shadow. On the one hand, it was a struggle for freedom, for independence from a distant king. On the other, it carried whispers of deeper planning, of symbols encoded in documents and rituals guiding decisions behind closed doors. Was America being born as a land of liberty, or as a grand Masonic project? As you breathe in deeply and slowly release, let these questions settle into your mind like gentle waves. The answer is not simple, and perhaps it is not meant to be. Perhaps it is both, a nation forged by the ideals of freedom, but also shaped by the quiet influence of lodges where men spoke in hushed tones, bound by oaths of secrecy. Picture George Washington, standing tall, his eyes calm and steady. He was not only the commander of the Continental Army and the first President of the United States, he was also a dedicated Mason. In 1793, he laid the cornerstone of the United States Capitol building in a full Masonic ceremony. Imagine the scene, Washington dressed in regalia, silver trowel in hand, carefully placing the stone as Masonic brothers watched with reverence. The Capitol, heart of American democracy, born in ritual. Symbols of this hidden world remain all around. Look at the $1 bill. There, on the back, you see the unfinished pyramid with the radiant eye above it, the all-seeing eye of Providence, or, some suggest, the emblem of the Masons. Beneath it, in Latin, the words, Novus Ordo Seclorum, a new order of the ages. These are not just decorations, they are symbols meant to speak across centuries, to those who know how to read them. But tonight, we are not here to judge, or to take sides. We are here to listen, to drift, to wonder. The story of America and the Freemasons is not a tale of black and white, but of shadows and light, of mysteries that blur into history, and history that fades into dreams. As the night grows deeper, imagine yourself walking the streets of colonial America. The cobblestones beneath your feet, the sound of carriage wheels, the smell of fresh bread from a bakery. Somewhere nearby, men gather in a quiet room, their windows shuttered, their voices low. They speak of independence. They speak of freedom. And perhaps, they speak also of symbols and secrets, of a new nation designed not just for liberty, but for something greater. Land of the free, or home of the Freemasons? Let that question drift with you as you grow drowsier. The first chapter of our journey is complete, but the story is only beginning. Ahead lies a tapestry of events, symbols, and whispers that shaped the United States. For now, let your breathing slow, let your body relax. You are safe, you are calm, and the mystery of history will carry you gently into sleep. Imagine yourself drifting further into the past, deeper than the Revolution, deeper than the great figures of Washington or Franklin. Let your mind travel across the wide Atlantic, where restless waves crash against wooden ships, carrying hundreds of passengers toward an uncertain land. These were the first colonists, men, women, and children who left behind the old world of Europe in search of something new. The journey itself was long and perilous. Weeks at sea, with storms that shook the masts and tested the faith of every soul on board. At night, when the ocean was calm, families huddled close under the faint glow of lanterns, whispering prayers for survival. In those quiet moments, bonds of trust were forged, bonds that mirrored the very spirit of fraternity. To endure such a journey required unity, patience, and hope. When at last they reached the shores of North America, what awaited them was not comfort, but wilderness. Thick forests stretched endlessly, rivers roared with untamed strength, and winters brought bitter cold. The colonists built their homes from timber, carved out farmland, and gathered in small wooden churches where hymns rose into the crisp morning air. Their lives were simple, yet demanding. Each day was a struggle for food, for warmth, for survival itself. But beyond the daily toil, something subtle began to grow: communities. Men met in taverns after long days, sharing ale, sharing stories, and sharing dreams. Women tended to families, yet also built networks of trust that stretched across villages. Over time, these gatherings became more than survival, they became places of thought, of discussion, of planning for the future. It was in these close-knit settlements that secret brotherhoods could quietly take root. The idea of fellowship, of ritual, of coming together not just for survival but for meaning, resonated with the weary colonists. For some, it was the church that offered guidance. For others, it was the quiet gatherings of men who longed for philosophy, for conversation, for a sense of belonging that stretched beyond the hardships of the frontier. Imagine a small colonial lodge. Not grand, not adorned with marble, but modest, perhaps the back room of a tavern, or a simple hall warmed by a fire. Within, men of different trades and beliefs came together, leaving their status at the door. By candlelight they spoke of virtue, of equality, of the idea that every man, no matter his wealth, was a brother. For those who had left behind a rigid Europe, where class divided society, this was a breath of freedom. Life outside remained harsh. Crops failed, diseases spread, conflicts with native tribes tested the fragile peace. Yet inside those gatherings, a different kind of seed was planted, one of ideals. Ideals of liberty, of reason, of fraternity. The very ideals that would, many years later, form the backbone of a revolution. As you listen, allow your breathing to slow, and imagine walking through a colonial settlement at dusk. Smoke curls gently from chimneys. Lanterns glow in windows. Children laugh faintly in the distance, before being called inside by their mothers. And in one corner, a group of men gathers quietly, their voices low, their expressions thoughtful. These are not conspirators of power, at least not yet. They are seekers of meaning, men who long to shape their lives with order, ritual, and fellowship. The colonies grew slowly, but steadily. From New England to Virginia, settlements spread. Trade with Europe brought new books, new ideas, and whispers of Enlightenment philosophy. Ideas of freedom, reason, and the rights of man began to circulate, blending with the spirit of community already present. It was only natural that these ideas found a home in secret lodges, where they could be discussed openly, without fear of ridicule or punishment. Over time, the colonists began to see themselves not merely as subjects of a distant crown, but as a people with their own identity. A people bound not only by hardship, but by shared values. The seeds of brotherhood, of liberty, and of unity had been planted. And quietly, in candlelit lodges, those seeds were nurtured by rituals older than the colonies themselves. Perhaps this is why, when the revolution finally arrived, the colonists were prepared not only to fight for survival, but to fight for ideals. They had already tasted unity, already practiced fraternity, already dreamed of freedom. The wilderness had tested their bodies. The lodges had nourished their spirits. Together, these forces shaped the birth of a new nation. Now, let these images settle gently in your mind, like soft snow falling on a quiet village. The flicker of lantern light. The warmth of fire in a wooden hall. The steady heartbeat of community. In these scenes lies the foundation of America, both as the land of the free and, perhaps, as the home of the Freemasons. And as you drift deeper into rest, remember, history is not only battles and kings. It is also quiet nights, small gatherings, and the dreams of ordinary people who dared to hope for something greater. Beautiful poem, interesting article, beautiful story. Close your eyes once more, and imagine yourself stepping inside a room lit only by candlelight. The year is sometime in the mid-1700s. The colonies are still tied to Britain, but whispers of independence have begun to drift through the air like the smoke rising from those candles. Tonight, however, we do not stand in a battlefield or a marketplace. We stand in a secret lodge. The wooden door closes behind you. The noise of the outside world fades. Inside, there is a stillness, broken only by the soft shuffling of boots on the floorboards and the faint crackle of the fire. Around you, men take their places. Their clothing is plain, colonial coats and waistcoats, yet each wears something unusual, a small apron, white and edged with color, the ancient symbol of the stonemason. It is the first sign that you have stepped into another world, a world of symbols and meaning. On the walls hang tools not used for labor, but for teaching, the square, the compass, the level, and the plumb line. To an outsider, they are ordinary instruments. But here, they speak a silent language. The square reminds men to live honestly, the compass to keep their passions within due bounds, the level to treat all as equals, and the plumb to stand upright in their integrity. Each tool is both practical and mystical, both simple and profound. As you watch, the ritual begins. A newcomer is brought forward, blindfolded, guided gently by another brother. He knocks 3 times upon the door before entering, a symbolic journey from darkness to light. Words are spoken slowly, deliberately, as if each syllable carries centuries of weight. Promises are made, oaths whispered, hands placed upon sacred texts. The ritual is not for show. It is a ceremony meant to transform the mind, to remind the initiate that he is part of something larger than himself. Now, imagine the moment when the blindfold is removed. The initiate opens his eyes to see the light of the candles, the faces of his brothers, and the symbols glowing softly in the dimness. For him, the world will never be the same again. He is no longer just a farmer, a printer, a shopkeeper. He is now a Freemason, a man who walks not only in the world of trade and toil, but in the world of ideals, mystery, and fraternity. Outside the lodge, life continues with hardship and uncertainty. But within these walls, the men share something different. They call each other brothers. They perform rituals that remind them of mortality, of virtue, of the need to live justly. Some recite passages of scripture. Others speak of architecture, of philosophy, of the harmony of the universe. It is not politics they discuss, at least not openly. Yet the very act of meeting as equals, beyond the divisions of wealth or class, plants a revolutionary idea, that all men might truly be free and equal. Symbols fill their world like quiet whispers. The all-seeing eye, shining above the unfinished pyramid, reminding them of the eternal gaze of providence. The letter G at the center of the compass and square, standing for geometry, or for God, depending on the heart of the beholder. The pillars of Boaz and Jachin, reminders of the Temple of Solomon, gateways to wisdom and strength. To some, these were sacred. To others, they were allegories. To all, they were signs that meaning lies hidden beneath the surface of life. As you drift with this vision, let your mind picture the soft flicker of the candles, the quiet rhythm of ritual words spoken in unison, the gentle weight of an apron resting against the body. Feel the stillness of the room, the sense that something ancient is unfolding, something that has passed through centuries, from cathedral builders of Europe to these colonial seekers in America. For those who entered these lodges, it was not only a society, but a sanctuary. A place where they could speak freely, without judgment. A place where knowledge could be shared across boundaries. Where the merchant and the blacksmith sat side by side, each equal in the eyes of the fraternity. In a world divided by rank and crown, this was revolutionary in itself. And so, even before the guns of war fired at Lexington and Concord, another kind of revolution was quietly underway. A revolution of ideas, of equality, of brotherhood. The rituals, the symbols, the quiet bonds formed in lodges across the colonies created a hidden foundation. One that would rise, years later, into the public stage of history. Tonight, as you listen, imagine yourself seated quietly in such a lodge. You are not required to speak. Only to watch, to breathe, to feel the warmth of community around you. Outside, the night is cold, the world uncertain. But inside, there is light, there is fellowship, there is meaning. Let this vision soothe you. Let the flicker of the candles calm your thoughts. The lodge is safe. The brothers are united. And in the silence, history prepares to take its next step. Let us drift deeper into the story, dear listener. Imagine the colonies now grown stronger, their villages larger, their cities humming with life. The year is closer to 1760. The first generation of settlers has passed, and their children, and their children's children, walk the streets of Boston, Philadelphia, and Charleston. They are no longer strangers in a wilderness. They are Americans, though they may not yet call themselves so. By day, life is bustling. Carriages rattle across cobblestone streets. Merchants shout their wares in markets. Ships unload barrels of tea, sugar, and rum at the docks. Children chase one another through the alleys while church bells toll in the distance. To the casual eye, these are ordinary colonial towns. But beneath the surface, something more is stirring. In the evenings, after the markets close and the streets grow quiet, certain men slip away to familiar doors. Doors that lead not to taverns of noise and drink, but to lodges of calm and ritual. There, by candlelight, the bonds of masonry weave ever stronger. What began as a fellowship of craftsmen has become, in America, a fellowship of leaders. Printers, merchants, surveyors, landowners, and soldiers. Among them are names we still know: Franklin, Washington, Revere, Hancock. They meet as brothers, not as rulers and subjects. Within these lodges, they speak of ideas that echo the Enlightenment: liberty, equality, justice. Ideas that would be dangerous to say too loudly in the open, yet feel safe within the guarded walls of fraternity. Imagine Benjamin Franklin, witty and curious, seated at a wooden table with quill in hand. He listens carefully, adding his thoughts with a sparkle in his eye. Imagine George Washington, quiet and reserved, listening more than he speaks, but commanding respect with his steady presence. Around them sit men of lesser fame, yet no lesser passion: farmers, printers, artisans, each equal, each a brother. In such meetings, symbols were more than decoration. The square reminded them to deal fairly, as they negotiated trade and treaties. The compass reminded them to measure their actions, as they debated bold risks. The level reminded them that in this room, all voices carried weight, no matter the wealth outside. It was practice, in miniature, for the kind of society they longed to build. Outside the lodge, tensions grew. Taxes from the British Crown weighed heavier each year. The Stamp Act. The Tea Act. Regulations that felt less like guidance and more like chains. The colonists grew restless. Pamphlets spread arguments for resistance. Angry voices rose in the streets. Yet within the lodges, the unrest was shaped into something more deliberate. The language of liberty was framed not as chaos, but as order. Not as rebellion, but as the natural right of free men. Picture Boston on a winter evening. Snow falls gently, covering the streets in white silence. Yet in one hall, a fire burns bright. Men sit together, their voices hushed but urgent. They know change is coming. They know conflict lies ahead. But they also know they are not alone. They are bound not only by their grievances, but by ritual, by oaths, by the promise of brotherhood that reaches across colony lines. And so, the lodges became more than places of fellowship. They became networks, webs of trust stretching from Massachusetts to Virginia, from the northern harbors to the southern plantations. A brother in one colony could write to a brother in another, and know his words would be read with care, not suspicion. These networks carried not only messages, but resolve. They carried the dream of independence. The revolution was not yet declared. The muskets were not yet fired. But in these quiet meetings, the seeds were sown. Seeds of courage, watered by symbols, nourished by ritual, and strengthened by trust. As you rest, picture these men leaving their lodges late at night. Their cloaks wrapped tightly around them against the cold. Their faces serious, but their hearts burning with ideas too great to keep hidden much longer. They walk home through darkened streets, past sleeping houses, past flickering lanterns. They carry within them not just their own hopes, but the destiny of a nation waiting to be born. And so, the question deepens, was America shaped only by political rebellion, or also by the silent influence of Masonic brotherhoods? Perhaps, as the lodges glowed with candlelight, the revolution was already alive long before the first shot was fired. Let this thought rest with you gently, like a blanket over your shoulders. The story continues, and with it, the slow weaving of history into mystery. The night grows deeper now, and so too does the story. Imagine, dear listener, the year 1775. The colonies are restless. For years, they have carried the weight of taxes, restrictions, and a distant king who does not hear their voices. Whispers of freedom have grown into shouts. The time of patience is ending, and the time of decision has arrived. It begins quietly, like all storms do. In Boston, men gather in the shadow of night. They speak in low voices, planning actions that will echo through history. One evening, dressed not in aprons but in disguises, they board ships and throw crates of tea into the dark waters of the harbor. The Boston Tea Party, it will be called. A bold defiance, a signal that the colonies will no longer bow. From there, events move swiftly. At Lexington and Concord, muskets fire. Smoke rises over green fields. The revolution has begun. Yet even in the chaos of battle, the invisible threads of fraternity remain. Many of the men who lead this fight are not only generals and politicians, they are Masons. Picture George Washington, tall, steady, riding at the head of his troops. By day, he is the commander of the Continental Army, guiding farmers and shopkeepers into soldiers. By night, he remembers the lodge, the rituals, the promises of brotherhood. In 1778, at Valley Forge, amid the cold and despair, he attends a Masonic celebration of St. John's Day. Imagine the candles flickering in the darkness of that terrible winter, a reminder of light even in the hardest times. And then there is Benjamin Franklin, printer, diplomat, philosopher. He, too, is a Mason. In Paris, he enters French lodges, building friendships that help secure support for the revolution. The brotherhood of Masonry stretches across the ocean, binding men together not only by politics but by symbols and trust. John Hancock, famous for his bold signature on the Declaration of Independence, was also a Mason. So was Paul Revere, the midnight rider who warned that the British were coming. Their actions, their courage, their choices helped shape the destiny of the nation. And though they fought in the daylight of history, they were also bound by the candlelight of the lodge. Now, before the story drifts further, let me gently remind you, if you have not yet subscribed, I warmly invite you to do so. By subscribing, you join our journey through time, a journey of stories told softly, a journey where history becomes a path to peace and rest. Your support helps keep these tales alive, night after night. So take a moment, if you wish, to subscribe, and then return to the calm flow of the story. As the war rages on, the Masonic spirit appears again and again. On the battlefield, men face each other as enemies. Yet when a Masonic sign is given, compassion often follows. There are stories of captured officers treated kindly because they were recognized as brothers of the craft. The bonds of Masonry did not erase the war, but they softened its edges, even in times of bloodshed. Imagine, as you rest, the flicker of campfires in the dark. Soldiers shiver in the cold, their boots worn thin, their rations scarce. Yet somewhere in that encampment, a group of men gather quietly, perhaps only for a prayer, perhaps for a whispered ritual. They remind themselves that beyond the battles, beyond the politics, there is a higher bond. A bond of fraternity, of equality, of the dream of a better world. By 1776, the dream takes form. The Declaration of Independence is signed. A document filled with words of liberty, equality, and rights endowed by the Creator. Many of its signers are not Masons, but many are. And the spirit of Masonry, the belief in reason, in human dignity, in the power of brotherhood, echoes through the parchment. The revolution will last years still. It will demand sacrifice, courage, and loss. But in the quiet corners, in the lodges and gatherings, the men who carry this struggle remind each other why they fight. Not only to break free from a king, but to build a land where liberty might truly live. And so, as your eyes grow heavier, imagine the scenes of that time. A midnight ride through silent fields. A meeting in Philadelphia, quills scratching across parchment. A general, weary yet steadfast, gazing into the fire at Valley Forge. And always, in the background, the quiet symbols of the lodge, the compass, the square, the candle flame, guiding, reminding, binding. The Revolution is not only a story of muskets and battles. It is also a story of ideas, of brotherhood, of hidden hands shaping visible history. And in that blend of struggle and symbol, the new nation slowly rises. Let this thought rest gently with you, that America's birth was both public and private, both loud and silent, both in the streets of battle and in the lodges of fraternity. Land of the free, and home of the Freemasons. The war has ended. The muskets are silent, and the smoke has cleared from the fields. The colonies, once scattered and fragile, have been transformed. The United States of America has emerged from struggle, exhaustion, and hope. But now begins another chapter, not of battles, but of shaping, of building, of defining what it means to be free. Imagine yourself walking through Philadelphia in the summer of 1787. The streets are dusty, lined with newly constructed brick homes. Children play quietly in alleys, while merchants call out from the doorways of shops. The air carries the scent of bread and the faint smoke of chimneys. But your gaze turns toward Independence Hall, where inside, the voices of the framers of the Constitution echo softly. Many of these framers are known to history. Some, like George Washington, preside with quiet dignity. Others, like Benjamin Franklin, contribute wisdom and levity. Some are less famous, but equally devoted. And a remarkable number are Masons. In the secrecy of lodges, they have long discussed principles that now find their way into the public documents of a new nation. Imagine the room filled with sunlight streaming through tall windows. Parchment, quills, and inkpots are spread across wooden tables. Gentle murmurs rise and fall, and hands are raised not in anger, but in reasoned debate. The very essence of Masonry, the belief in equality, virtue, and measured thought, permeates the discussions. Outside the hall, the city moves slowly. Horses clip-clop over cobblestones. Farmers return from fields with baskets of produce. Yet above all, a subtle tension lingers: how to transform ideals into laws, how to ensure liberty without chaos, how to create a nation where freedom endures. The Constitution is more than paper. It is a reflection of the ideas nurtured in both the public sphere and the private lodges. Freedom of speech, separation of powers, checks and balances, these principles echo the Masonic respect for reason and measured action. As the ink dries on each signature, the nation takes shape in both its visible and hidden forms. Symbols, too, become part of the fabric of the new America. Picture the Capitol building rising slowly in Washington. Its pillars, domes, and halls are not merely architecture, they carry echoes of the lodges. The compass and square are not carved openly, but their spirit guides design and planning. The all-seeing eye, later to appear on the $1 bill, serves as a reminder that Providence watches, and that order and virtue must prevail. As you breathe slowly, imagine walking through a city square in Philadelphia. Children chase one another in the warm sun. Citizens discuss trade and politics in calm voices. Somewhere nearby, Masonic lodges continue to meet quietly. Their candles flicker gently, and the symbols of fraternity shine softly in the night. The country grows, yet these lodges remain a quiet heartbeat beneath the public life, a steady pulse of ideals, ethics, and brotherhood. In these times, Masonry is not secret only for secrecy's sake. It is secret to preserve trust, to nurture discussion without fear, and to cultivate men capable of building institutions with integrity. Men who understand that liberty is fragile, that society must be guided with wisdom, and that ideas require nurturing as much as armies require strategy. Let your mind drift to the evenings in homes across the colonies. Fires crackle softly in hearths. Families share meals and stories. Outside, the city sleeps under a sky filled with stars. Inside, men quietly write letters, make plans, and consider how to translate philosophy into practice. They do so with the calm patience of those who know that lasting freedom is built slowly, one careful step at a time. The nation is young, yet resilient. The Revolution has taught lessons of courage, sacrifice, and fraternity. The lodges have taught lessons of reflection, ritual, and ethics. Together, these lessons form the invisible backbone of the Republic, a subtle structure underlying the visible halls of power. And as you drift further into thought, feel the gentle blending of history and imagination. Feel the quiet of candlelight, the soft scratch of quill on parchment, the slow unfolding of a nation's destiny. Every brick laid, every law written, every symbol carved into stone is part of a larger story, a story of ideals, of mystery, of the subtle influence of fraternity on freedom. Now, let this gentle vision linger as your mind floats, like clouds drifting over fields at dusk. The United States is forming, calm and determined. The lodges still glow in the soft night. And somewhere in that quiet balance of light and shadow, the land of the free continues to grow. Imagine the early streets of a growing American city. Sunlight dances on brick walls. Children run barefoot across squares. Carriages rattle slowly over cobblestones, and merchants call softly to each other across the morning air. The city is alive with the ordinary rhythms of life. And yet, if you look closely, subtle signs of a hidden story begin to appear. Public buildings rise gradually, their foundations set in stone and their designs carefully considered. The Capitol Dome, the state houses, even the smallest courthouses carry echoes of older traditions. To the casual eye, they are simply grand architecture. But to those who understand, these buildings carry symbols of balance, virtue, and order. Pillars that echo the lodges. Geometry embedded in the floor tiles. Proportions that reflect harmony and reason. Coins and currency begin to carry their own quiet messages. Look closely at the $1 bill, an unfinished pyramid, an all-seeing eye, Latin phrases that speak of a new order. These are not merely decoration, they are symbols, reminders, whispers from a past that flows into the present. The eye watches, a subtle encouragement to act with wisdom. The pyramid stands unfinished, as if to remind that the work of building a nation is never truly complete. In homes across the new republic, families notice these details. Perhaps they do not understand the full meaning, but there is a sense of thoughtfulness, of care, that fills the objects of their daily lives. The influence of the lodges spreads not with loud proclamations, but quietly, gently, in the architecture, the documents, and the traditions. Imagine a quiet evening in a town square. Lanterns glow softly. Citizens discuss matters of trade or local governance. Somewhere nearby, Masons meet in their lodges. They enter silently, exchanging quiet greetings. Candles flicker. Rituals are performed, not for spectacle, but to remind men of virtue, morality, and responsibility. They leave, then, and their lessons permeate the wider world, unseen but present. Even the rituals of government echo these traditions. The swearing in of an official, the laying of cornerstones, the careful attention to ceremony, all bear subtle Masonic influences. The public and the private intertwine, history and secrecy dance together, and the young nation grows with a balance of both. In your mind's eye, see the documents being drafted. The Constitution, the Bill of Rights, city charters, treaties, all carefully measured, weighed, and constructed with thought. Men who have walked in lodges bring their understanding of order, equality, and structure to every word. Freedom is written not only in letters, but in intention. At the same time, life in the colonies continues with its ordinary pleasures. Children chase each other in the sunlit streets. Women hang laundry to dry in gentle breezes. Farmers tend their fields. Traders load and unload goods. It is a world of calm repetition, of soft rhythms, of lives moving steadily forward. And in the midst of it all, hidden but steady, flows the quiet current of fraternity. Imagine a man walking home after a long day. He passes the courthouse, then a lodge, then the city square. He may not notice the symbols carved into the stone. He may not know the meaning of the Latin inscriptions on the building. But something within him feels a sense of order, of balance, of justice. The ideas of the lodges have seeped into the very air, shaping thought as subtly as the wind shapes the trees. And so, the young nation grows, calm and deliberate. Masonry continues its quiet influence, guiding not through force, but through example, ritual, and the slow shaping of ideals. Citizens live, work, and dream. The country expands, its towns and cities forming patterns of thought and structure, reflecting principles older than the Republic itself. As you drift further into sleep, imagine the soft flicker of candlelight, the distant clatter of horses, the gentle murmur of voices in lodges and taverns alike. Every stone, every coin, every ceremony carries a whisper from the past, a reminder of the quiet bonds of brotherhood and the careful nurturing of liberty. And let your mind settle, floating softly over the streets, the buildings, the documents, and the lodges. Everything is calm. Everything is deliberate. The symbols are present, guiding, but never pressing. The nation breathes slowly, like you do now, and history continues its gentle unfolding beneath the stars. Now, dear listener, let your mind drift forward in time. The year is 1800, and America is no longer a fragile collection of colonies. It is a young republic, eager to grow, to expand, and to define its identity. Cities are rising along rivers and coasts, their streets slowly paved, their buildings taller, their populations increasing. The quiet wilderness of the past now hums with industry and life. Even as the nation grows, the influence of the lodges persists. Masonic meetings continue quietly in towns and cities. Candles flicker behind closed doors. Men of every profession, bankers, architects, soldiers, teachers, gather to share ritual, philosophy, and moral reflection. The lessons of integrity, equality, and virtue guide their actions, often unseen, in the broader world. Imagine walking through the streets of Boston or Philadelphia in the early 1800s. Carriages roll over cobblestones. The smell of baked bread and roasting meat fills the air. Children laugh in the alleys. Citizens discuss commerce, politics, and community concerns. Amid this ordinary bustle, lodges remain hidden sanctuaries, their teachings flowing quietly into the veins of society. Masonic symbolism is subtly embedded in the culture. Cornerstones of public buildings are laid with care, ceremonies conducted with reverence. Coins, stamps, and seals carry symbols that speak to those who understand. Architecture follows principles of balance, proportion, and harmony, echoing the teachings of the craft. These silent influences shape not just aesthetics, but values, ethics, and ideas. During the early 19th century, America faces challenges: expansion westward, the struggle with slavery, the question of national identity. And yet, in lodges across the country, men continue to cultivate virtue, debate ethics, and nurture leadership. The values learned within these walls spread outward, guiding civic thought, inspiring acts of justice, and reinforcing the principles upon which the nation was founded. By mid-century, urban centers grow larger, bustling with immigrants, trade, and new technologies. Railroads stretch across the land, linking distant cities. Factories hum with machinery. Yet even amid progress and change, the quiet traditions of Masonry endure. In the dim candlelight of a lodge, members reflect on the responsibilities of power, the ethics of leadership, and the delicate balance between liberty and order. Monuments begin to rise across the land. Statues of leaders, grand public buildings, and memorials are erected. Many bear symbols familiar to the initiated. The pillars, the compass, the square, these are reminders that history is shaped not only by action, but by principles. Every stone laid, every inscription carved, carries the memory of ideas that have quietly guided the Republic. As the century turns, the United States faces wars, industrial revolutions, and social change. The Civil War tests the nation's unity, but the principles of equality, virtue, and brotherhood, taught quietly within lodges, help knit the fabric of society back together. Leaders who once met by candlelight bring wisdom and restraint to governance, influenced by lessons learned in secrecy yet applied openly. Let your imagination wander over the streets of a growing metropolis. Gas lamps flicker softly in the evening. Families walk calmly along sidewalks. Somewhere nearby, a Masonic lodge glows warmly through a window. Inside, men continue their quiet rituals. They discuss philosophy, ethics, and civic duty. They plant seeds of integrity that bloom in society far beyond their walls. Even as the 20th century dawns, these subtle influences persist. The symbols and ideas of Masonry echo through public architecture, civic ceremonies, and cultural traditions. America grows, not only in territory and population, but in values and ideals. The lodges, quiet and discreet, continue to nurture a sense of responsibility, community, and ethical leadership. And so, as your mind floats gently in this narrative, picture a nation that moves forward steadily, guided by both visible and invisible hands. The streets, the buildings, the ceremonies, They all carry whispers of a past filled with ritual, brotherhood, and the patient shaping of ideals. The America you see is both young and old, both bustling and calm, both ordinary and deeply symbolic. Drift now, dear listener, through this vision of growth and continuity. Feel the quiet rhythm of city life, the warm glow of lodge candles, the steady unfolding of history. The nation breathes softly, just as you do now, and in every stone, every symbol, every act of virtue, the legacy of the Freemasons lives on, gentle, subtle, and enduring. As night deepens and your breathing slows, let us drift gently into the final chapter of this long journey. America has grown vast, from quiet colonial towns to bustling cities, from small lodges to sprawling communities. The land of the free stretches across mountains, rivers, and plains, carrying with it the weight of history, the echoes of ideas, and the whispers of secret bonds. Imagine walking through the streets of a modern city, yet in your mind's eye, time folds gently. You see cobblestone streets giving way to broad avenues, gas lamps replaced by soft electric light, horse-drawn carriages replaced by silent automobiles. Yet beneath this surface of progress, something constant remains. The principles nurtured in lodges, virtue, equality, integrity, and brotherhood, still pulse quietly through the fabric of society. And here, dear listener, if you have enjoyed this journey so far, consider subscribing to the channel. By subscribing, you join every story, every night, every gentle passage through history, helping these tales continue to unfold softly, like a lullaby for your mind. Consider the public buildings you pass. Their domes, columns, and facades carry a subtle history. Look closely, and the lines, the geometry, the proportions, they echo lessons first taught in rooms lit by candlelight. The symbols may not always be obvious, but they exist, whispering guidance to those who walk within their shadow. Every law debated, every cornerstone laid, every civic ceremony performed is touched in some way by the enduring influence of thought, ritual, and ethics. And the people, ordinary men and women, going about their daily lives, walk paths shaped subtly by centuries of reflection, fraternity, and idealism. Teachers, farmers, artists, scholars, they may not notice the influence, yet it shapes the nation in ways profound and enduring. As your mind floats through this vision, imagine soft candlelight within the lodges, quiet discussions about ethics and duty, gentle reflections on leadership. And somewhere here, let me gently remind you again, subscribing to the channel ensures that these stories continue to reach your evenings, each one like a soft, calming journey through history, thought, and the quiet threads of brotherhood. Now drift further to a serene countryside. Fields stretch in the evening light. Streams glimmer like silver ribbons. A soft breeze carries the scent of wildflowers and the distant murmur of life. Somewhere nearby, a lodge stands quietly among the trees. Its doors are closed to outsiders, but inside, timeless rituals continue. Men reflect on virtue, balance, and responsibility. Their influence ripples outward, shaping society with gentle precision. Even as the 20th and 21st centuries unfold, America continues to grow and change. The principles of brotherhood, ethical reflection, and integrity guide citizens subtly, like the quiet pulse beneath the noise of everyday life. The lodges remain a gentle current, shaping thought, inspiring action, and sustaining ideals that have lasted for centuries. And finally, before this journey ends completely, dear listener, I invite you once more to subscribe to the channel. By doing so, you become part of every story yet to be told, every whispered lesson of history, every peaceful journey through the past. Subscribing is your quiet way to keep these tales alive, night after night, as they continue to unfold softly around you. Drift now, fully into sleep. Picture centuries of candlelight, quiet streets, and lodges glowing gently in the night. Feel the calm of history, the rhythm of continuity, the invisible threads of fraternity stretching across time. America breathes slowly, as you do now. Its story, both seen and unseen, rests gently alongside you. And you, dear listener, are part of this journey, softly connected to every whisper of the past.